In 2010, a group of marketing experts gathered in Helsinki with a tough assignment: turn Finland into a global tourist destination. Instead of highlighting their pristine schools or foraging culture, they made a counterintuitive pitch. They decided to bottle and sell the country's silence. Selling absolute quiet is a difficult pitch. We live in a society that equates noise with action and presence. If a place is loud, things are happening. If a room is silent, we assume it is vacant or unproductive. However, human biology indicates that noise is a stressor. In 1859, Florence Nightingale argued that sudden, unnecessary clatter in hospital wards caused measurable distress and even physical harm to recovering patients. Modern data supports her warning. The World Health Organization calculates that residents of Western Europe collectively lose 1 million years of healthy life every single year as a direct result of the chronic stress of noise pollution. Because chronic noise is damaging, we assume that silence is merely a protective state, a blank space between events. But treating quiet as an empty void misjudges how our bodies actually respond to stillness. For decades, medical researchers treated silence as a baseline control. When physician Luciano Bernardi studied the physiological effects of music in 2006, he inserted blank pauses between tracks to provide a neutral point for comparison. He expected the quiet moments to yield zero physiological data. This graph shows physiological arousal levels during Bernardi's experiment. The high points track the active listening to music. But look what happens during the 2-minute blink pauses. The patient's blood pressure and heart rates plummeted below the initial baseline. The blink pauses were more deeply relaxing than the relaxing music he was testing. A few years later, biologist M.K. Kirsty found a similar anomaly in mice. She exposed them to different sounds, again using silence as a control. The noise stimuli had no lasting impact, but 2 hours of absolute quiet triggered the growth of brand new, functioning cells in the hippocampus, the brain region tied to memory. This activity occurs entirely because of the default mode network. When you remove external auditory input, the brain shifts resources inward, integrating information into an intense, conscious workspace. Neurologically, silence is an active state of cellular regeneration and complex internal processing. This same default mode network, the workspace that handles self-reflection and information processing, drives how we navigate professional environments. However, corporate culture routinely penalizes the quiet people who rely on this internal network. We have a cultural obsession with volume. The highest political offices and the ranks of the richest executives are dominated by highly extroverted, loud personalities. Digital spaces reinforce this, rewarding aggressive influencers who prioritize volume over substance. In our current economy, the louder you are, the more attention you extract. Because of this dynamic, managers frequently misjudge their quiet employees. In an office geared toward extroverts, a worker who pauses to reflect before speaking is often written off as passive or unengaged. But organizational psychology shows that introverted leaders excel by utilizing their internal workspace to process information. They listen, synthesize input, and empower their teams to act, rather than reacting impulsively. In business dynamics, an introverted leader's silence functions as a strategic tool for empathy and group motivation. The consequences of misunderstanding silence become most severe in clinical psychology, specifically with a condition known as selective mutism. When a child stops speaking at school, authority figures often view it as a behavioral issue. Teachers and parents frequently claim the child is being oppositional or stubborn, as if the silence were a conscious choice. Clinical research reveals a biological reality rooted in anxiety. When the child enters a specific social environment, their amygdala triggers an overwhelming fight, flight, or freeze response. The anxiety causes the skeletal muscles of the larynx to contract and lock up. This transforms silence from a preference into a physical inability to produce sound. For those suffering from selective mutism, silence is a state of physiological terror. The shared thread connecting the laboratory, the boardroom, and the clinic is clear. Treating silence as an empty void is a fundamental flaw in human perception. To apply this data, we must actively seek quiet to protect our brains from the physical damage of noise and allow for the regeneration found in Kirsty's study. Organizations must shift their focus, promoting leaders who thoughtfully listen in silence rather than rewarding those who loudly dictate. We must also replace our immediate frustration with empathy when we encounter individuals whose voices are paralyzed by anxiety. Those marketing experts in Finland recognized a truth our biology has always known: silence is a powerful resource.